Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. This is Orphanlast, aka Skylar Madison, and today we're going to be continuing with the character expression change animation in the 51 animation challenges. But really quick here, if I may be allowed to digress just for a moment, here you can see on my Twitter feed I posted this, and I understand it's misleading. I should have known better. Draw with Jazza meets Orphanlast. Well, not everyone, but there's a lot of people that thought that this means that there's going to be a collaboration between Jazza and I. But if you look at the actual description here, I say hashtag Jazza of tomorrow. And yes, I do see you depicting yourself this way even when you're 40. Jazza was just asking what people thought his avatar should look like when he's 40 or 50 or 60 or whatever. And I didn't see any reason why he should change it. And I just think, well, future of Jazza, possibly meeting me. How about that? And so I drew this picture, and it kind of distracted me from making this video a little bit. But, you know, I went ahead and submitted it. Who knows? Maybe he might see it. Who knows? Maybe not. But again, just to reiterate, once again, Jazza currently has no plans to collaborate with me. This image was not an announcement of any kind. It's just me thinking up a future with Jazza in it and posting it, thinking maybe he might see it. That's it. That's all this was. Anyways, let's get into the main topic of the video. So in the previous video where I tackled the 51 animation challenges, I mentioned how 30 frames per second were being dumped into a 24 frame per second scene. And so this caused problems. And here you can actually see the stark difference. To the left is the scene where 30 frames per second is in a 24 frame per second scene. To the right is the video that's had time stretching applied to it. The video to the right is a little less than 6 seconds. The video to the left is about 8 seconds. That is a huge difference in just a matter of a few seconds. So it's really important that you guys know how to do that. I do have a tutorial on it, and it is a video titled Open Tunes Adjust Video Reference Timing. And the card is at the upper right corner of the screen right now. Now what you're looking at is basically a split screen where you see my video reference with the time stretching applied and the work that I did for the week. Now there's not a whole lot of animation that's really refined here, but at the very beginning you can actually see something that's really actually kind of fleshed out. Let's go ahead and take a look at that at full screen. Like, if you look closely at the very beginning, very lifelike movement is going on. Now, I am using the video reference a little bit more like a crutch at this point in time, but I kind of don't mind having a crutch right now. It's the first time that I've used a video reference, and so anything that can help me, I'm all for. And, you know, I went ahead and used the stretch and skew technique a little bit in this video, and it's working out great. It looks just perfect inside of the animation. Now, at this point, I haven't applied the time stretching to the video reference in the 51 animation challenge scene file. And so here you actually see me go through the whole process about 4 or 5 times until I finally get it to work. The problem is that the video reference column was locked. So that's something that you guys might want to take a look at and make sure if time stretch isn't working, make sure that the column is not locked. Sounds like something that's obvious that you'd be able to check immediately, but I don't know, for some reason it took me a little while to figure out. At this point, I'm just moving the already drawn frames of my animation to the proper timing. This takes a little bit of time, but everything worked out pretty good. I'm really happy with the result. Now, in my personal life, there's a little bit of a theme for the week that's been going on while I've been talking to you guys as you guys leave comments inside of my videos. Every once in a while, somebody comes over to me asking for technical support and such like that, and sometimes I'm able to help, sometimes I'm able to refer you to somebody who can help, and hope you guys are going to be able to get along pretty well. And by and large, everything worked out okay for this guy, but basically what wound up happening was he lost a lot of his scene. The scene got corrupted and everything like that. Now, typically when someone tells you, hey, make sure that you back up your files, you're thinking, oh, you know, my computer's pretty new, you know, it's not gonna crash, everything seems pretty smooth. It's not a matter of if your computer's going to crash. The matter is about whether or not you're going to have your scene corrupted. This is something that everyone has to be worried about, regardless of if you're using Toon Boom or Adobe Animate or what have you. Scenes get corrupted, and although it may possibly be a little bit more true that your scenes can possibly get corrupted inside of OpenToonz, I don't know. I've never had a scene get really truly corrupted, but basically just back them up. I've decided, especially since this most recent interaction with this subscriber, that I'm going to start backing up my animations, my project file inside of the OpenToonz stuff folder. I'm going to back that up every single time after I'm done using OpenToonz. Every single time. It's really important. Sometimes an animation of just a matter of 30 seconds can take up to 100 hours or more. It can take a long time. So back up your files, guys. It's really important. While making the content of this video, there was a few occasions when I tried to use Shift and Trace. Now, Shift and Trace is getting to be really cool. I've already shown you guys some of the new features that's in the most recent nightly build. I'm super excited about it. I'm really happy with how things are going with it. However, whenever you're animating an in-between especially, it's nice to be able to flip through your animation. Now, I'm not really quite sure how often professional animators necessarily use Shift and Trace. Maybe it's mainly something for breakdowns and keyframes. I don't know. But regardless, being able to flip through your animation is pretty useful, and having your frames spaced out to the timing that you need them is really nice now that the Shift and Trace feature allows you to be able to do that. But when you press back, you just go to the previous frame on the timeline. And then when you press forward, you just go back to your drawing that you're currently drawing. And when you press forward, you go to the empty frame that's right next to it. So it just seems like when you press back, you should go to where your Shift and Trace skin is located on the timeline. When you press forward after that, you should be on the frame that you're actually drawing on. And then when you press forward once again, you should go to where your other Shift and Trace skin is located. Now, I understand this is me giving another feature request. Every time I make one of these videos, I genuinely try not to do that. I really try not to do this. It's just that whenever I'm using OpenToonz, and especially when I'm excited about a new feature, I want to try it out. And then I have some sort of critique, and yeah, I understand, Rodney has a saying that software is never finished. No one's ever really, truly ever happy with a program, because as good as the program is, it can always be better. And yes, I understand that, and I agree with that, and yet, this seems like something that needs to be in the program, but I'm not making any demands or anything like that. Not that it would even matter if I gave demands about this. No one has to necessarily listen to me. I'm just saying this is something that frustrated me with Shift and Trace, but regardless if this feature winds up into OpenToonz at some point in time or not, I'll still use Shift and Trace, just maybe not as often as I would like. That's all. I'm still very happy with the new additions that have been put into the Shift and Trace feature. And as a little bit of a side note, since we're already talking about feature requests, it just seems like onion skins should probably work like that. You press back, you go to your red onion skin, and then you press forward and you go to where your actual frame that's selected is, that you're actually drawing on, and then you press forward again and you go to your green onion skin. Maybe a toggle that allows you to be able to do that. Of course, I'm in La La Land coming up with little wishes and stuff like that, and hoping that a developer fairy might be able to help me out a little bit, but they don't. The developer fairy can do whatever he or she wants. Earlier, you saw me kind of making these lines on the reference, and it was on the head of the character, and I thought this might be able to help me see the easing in and easing out. By and large, after having spent about 15 minutes doing that, I found that was kind of a completely pointless endeavor. It didn't even need to happen. I can just look at my video reference and just flip here and there and get that same exact information, no problem. So it's neither here nor there. Also notice how my video reference is on ones, and throughout most of the actual animation on the timeline, I have it on twos. This is deliberate. Putting the time stretch on 2s, making it so that you have less and less frames, can make it so that you lose clarity. And if something is moving really quickly, such as a steering wheel or something like that, it could actually make it look like it's going the opposite direction, or even actually going slower than it really is if you keep removing frames. And so keeping things on 1s lets you know, okay, so on a different column, I should probably have this steering wheel all on 1s, rotating, that sort of thing. So you need to be careful with the time stretch feature. You need to make sure that you're doing it pretty well. Also, one thing that I wound up really regretting was just how messy I was with my original sketches. Now, I've seen animators on the internet have some really ugly looking rough animations, and I don't know how they do it, to be honest. You turn on your onion skins and you don't know where the line even begins half the time. It's just this scraggly series of marks. You got your red onion skin, which is scraggly, crazy, sketchy looking, and then you have your green onion skin marks, which is scratchy. You don't know where one line ends and one line begins, and so you have to go back to the keyframes that you did earlier and refine them quite substantially. And I didn't really like that too much. Come to think about it, I think that I should have probably seriously spent some time finishing up, cleaning up the actual keyframes themselves so that they look more like a finished product. That way, when I go ahead and finish off my in-betweening process, I have something to work towards. But it's not anything that I can't work through at this stage. Keeping things really rudimentary, there's nothing wrong with that. It is what it is. Okay, so at this point we're kind of coming up on the best part of the video, at least in my opinion it is. I start doing a little bit of squash and stretch, and I start out pretty subtly with that hand that I just drew just now. And I kind of want to narrate what I'm doing at the time that I'm doing it, so there's going to be a little bit less editing to what it is that I'm describing. Trying to take away all of my stammers, stutters, and my breathing and such. It interferes with the timing and the editing and such like that. So I'm just going to leave things a little bit natural, a little bit. Yeah, you can see how that hand is just kind of squashed and stretched just a little bit, but the next frame after that, I believe, starts to get a lot more elaborate. And the program actually crashed around this point pretty soon here. And so I wound up drawing out this frame right here. I believe it's this frame at least. And the program crashed and I had to redraw this frame again. And so there's subtle differences from what you actually see me draw and what winds up on the screen at the end. But in the end, it's the same sort of thought process. It's kind of weird thinking about squash and stretch. Here it's a lot more squash and stretch. This is my first attempt at this particular thing. You're thinking about anatomy, how it looks when it's blurred. And yet trying to make it look like it makes sense, even if it's just as a singular image, I guess. Yeah, like, suppose this wasn't animation. If you were to communicate motion and yet keep anatomy, how would you do it? And that's the sort of thought process that I utilized. I actually think that I like this version of the squash and stretch better than the version that I wound up using after the crash. You saw the screen go a little bit bright there, which means that the program crashed right then and there. And so what you see in the red onion skin is a little bit different than what I wound up with. But I'm pretty happy with how it turned out regardless. The strange anatomy of a squash and stretch, I think it makes sense there. You see his middle finger, ring finger, and pinky and such kind of in the middle of his forearm because I wanted to blur out his finger, make it really stretchy and such. And, you know, when you're watching the animation, it doesn't even register. You don't even realize that squash and stretch is there, and that's what you want. And there comes this point where I point in the video reference, and I do this weird duck and moving backwards movement. And that right there, I wanted to really capture that with my head and put that into the actual animation itself. And you'll see me just flipping back and forth, trying to make sure that I got the placement of everything right. You'll see me use a selection tool on what I drew out occasionally and just move it just subtly, just so that I can make sure that I can get that weird curve going on, that little arc going on with the head. It doesn't seem to happen too much with any of the other body parts, but it just looked really nice, and so I wanted to keep that. And I think that the foot that's currently raised up, I think that I really did a good job just kind of drawing out how it would look in, at least as a two-dimensional object trying to be 3D looking, so that it can fool the human eye into thinking it's looking at a 3D object. I think that the weird anatomy, the foreshortening that's going on, I think that having the video reference really helps. I don't know why I didn't do this sooner, working with a video reference. I think that there was just too many things that scared me away from it at the time. Early on in OpenToon's history, OpenToon's would crash for all sorts of different reasons, and so a video reference inside of OpenToon's just sounded like it just caused problems. And OpenToon's has just come a long way, and it's only been until this point that I think that that's the reason. That's why I've started to use a video reference at this point in time. And I think that I possibly wouldn't have been ready to learn about time stretching your video reference to the proper timing and such like that. Who knows, maybe the people that helped me out in discovering that exact same feature might not have even known about it if I had tried it earlier. And so, special thanks to Rodney, by the way, for letting me know about the time stretch feature. You're awesome. Throughout this video, I've actually surprisingly quoted him a number of times and not realized it, and then not given him credit. But Rodney, credit where credit's due. You're a great guy. You're awesome. Thank you so much for being such a polite individual and such a knowledgeable resource to turn to. You're genuinely a stand-up guy. And so here we're kind of coming up towards the end of the video. You kind of see my sketching is getting much more refined, just simply because I got sick and tired of how rough my keyframes were. And so it's kind of like the reverse of what it should be. Your keyframes and your breakdowns should be the cleanest, and your in-betweens are supposed to be kind of strange, I guess. But I don't know. That's just how things worked out. And, there's times when the video reference, it just seems like, man, I haven't even used the video reference in a long time. Maybe I should just get rid of it at this point in the in-betweening process. That's something that I actually thought. But I can't tell you how invaluable keeping it around was. Being able to see that on which frame, when does this arm actually start to move? And it's what determined whether or not I got the squish and stretch that I wound up actually utilizing. And I'm just so happy that this is coming out the way it is. When this is finished, I'm going to be so pleased with the turnout. I just know it. Anyways, guys, that pretty much concludes it for this video. If you guys enjoyed it, please like, share, and subscribe. If you guys would like to get more notifications from me, feel free to click on the bell or go ahead and follow me on Twitter. If you guys would like to see more content from me, feel free to click on any of the content appearing on the screen right now. Thank you very much for your time.